Show starts in 1 minute. Good evening, folks, and a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you, one that will provide several hours of pleasurable relaxation and diversion for you and your family.
Like 9 out of 10 film stars, Raquel Welch uses Lux Beauty Soap.
Well, no, I like to be a woman and a man to be a man, you know.
We hope you'll make this a weekly visit. You love the tasty array of snacks we have to offer. Bring your friends. There are always wonderful new pictures to see. We hope you have a wonderful time.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Longhouse, the weekly show for the sensible centrist. And this is a cozy summertime hangout stream here today with me and Luddic Path. How are you doing?
Hello, everyone. I'm doing well. Amiss that we don't have any guests, but I think it's going to be a nice stream anyway.
Yeah, it's summertime. It's a lot of the guests are, vacationing, and certainly I am in a bit of a summertime mood when it comes to a lot of this stuff. So right now I'm just feeling like catching up on some articles, looking at some current events, chatting, just see what we can get out of it, really. So we have lined up a couple of topics for you today through these articles that we're going to be bringing out. So, I see a lot of people in the chat. That's good. We should probably just get started, honestly. Nordanal says he went to the beach today. It was lovely. That's great, Nordanal. I'll try not to do the usual thing of talking about the weather. It seems like that's what we do all the time. Here we go. So, this is just a funny image I found online, because there was a NATO summit this past week, and a couple of images surfaced of the news that ran post this NATO meeting was a very weird wording, which is what caught my attention at first, because it was along the lines of NATO establishes Ukraine's path to membership or something. It was a very strange wording of like it reinforces Ukraine's path to NATO membership. And of course, for Zelensky, the big gold medal, the big prize is a proper NATO membership, because that would mean obviously NATO intervention in Ukraine, right? And obviously NATO is not going to give that, because that means a war with Russia, right? And so it gets this kind of weird, yeah, dude, we're all, go Ukraine, but I mean, you're on your own. We're going to send some more drones and stuff, of course, but, good luck. And he's not taking that very very well.
Yeah, I don't know the context behind this picture, but he just looks so silly. Why can't he just wear some formal wear to these summit meetings? Does he have to wear this goofy ass?
I'm pretty sure this photo
stuff?
is taken right after one of those group photos where they all pose and then they turn to each other to talk and shake hands, right? And he ended up standing alone like this. So it was just very much a.
Oh really? They don't actually like him? Like it's all for show?
Well, I wouldn't read too much into this, right?
No, it's very easy, but again, it's just silly, standing by yourself. He is an actor. He knows how important PR is, right? To try to appear like you're in
almost
good
more
company,
than
least,
anything is that this face is him realizing what this looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps.
So it was just there was a lot of other funny. Let me see if I can bring up another one. I think that was Green River who Green River commented. Oh, there's another one. There was a lot of good memes here. Copy the address. Bring it up here. Whoops, didn't like that. If I did it like this. Just one moment. Boomerang my way through this. Here we go. I like this one.
Yes. Very nice.
Yiz the Unifier posted this one. This is probably all from some kind of like 4chan board or something, but it's been circulating a lot.
The potential is great.
What Green River posted was the rule by manlets photo, which is not quite true. I mean, there's a double step thing here. I don't know how tall all of these people are. Zelensky obviously is quite short. Rishi Sunak is also quite
short. The Swedish guy, what's his name, is very short. So,
and I'm kind of perplexed why Stoltenberg isn't in that photo, because he's all 90 centimeters, which isn't, you know, the tallest.
I thought it was him. I thought it was him in the middle. Maybe it's just a silhouette.
It's very, yeah. This photo is very blurred. I can't really make out.
That him? No,
I don't think so. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes,
the red tie.
It's him right here. Yeah. So he's taller than Biden, but I mean that's not a big, and Sunak, which isn't a big accomplishment. Is this Turkey's guy? I'm not quite.
He has the complexion, but I'm not into their politics. So. There's a tall fellow in the back there as well.
I mean, press 1 in the chat if you're like me and you're taller than most of the NATO members. I'm probably not taller than this guy, this guy here, but I'm taller than Stoltenberg by a couple of hairs at least. He's Serbian, says Burkal. All right, Erdogan is there.
Weakest Serbian. We got the
weakest Serbian. Yes.
Yeah.
Those are some good memes all around. Excuse me. Sorry, I just had dinner, so I'm kind of like
digesting,
clearing my throat a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. You got the reflux coming up, or did you
no,
have any seed oils?
I just ate very, very quickly. So I had some
too much air that comes down and it has to come back up again. It's
yes.
I know the feeling.
Oh, and while we're in a bit of a meme mindset, let me bring up this one as well. Hopefully you guys have sound. I just found it funny.
Honestly, the amount of white dudes with Thai women that are waiting to board international flights, it's an absurdity. It is crazy. Like, half of the couples in this airport right now are beautiful Thai women with super basic white dudes. Honestly.
And then obviously the I am yes Urno says, can she put the camera on her husband for a moment? Wife nationalism. Very good.
It's the Thai maxing. We have to do a Thai episode at some point.
Probably, yeah. All right, let's start hitting some of the articles, and the first topic is the good old men and women topic. The men and women
never gets old. It's just an eternal content mine.
Yes, exactly. Let me see if I can try to translate this article here. There we go. Because I pulled up some English and some Norwegian articles, so I'm going to do my best to... This is... because this year is local elections in Norway, which brings out a lot of fun stuff. Because there's a lot of funny mayoral candidates across the country. But this is a bit of a fluff piece, right? About a woman and a man who are both politicians and mayoral candidates for their local area, and the man is for Labour. He's running for Labour. She's running as a mayoral candidate for the Progress Party, which is well, it's most European parliaments have the center-right majority party and the center-right Labour Party, right? And then there's the acceptable right-wing party. That's what the Progress Party is as a shorthand.
We talked about the Norwegian political party spectrum before, right? And they're sort of in the borderlands. They have their sort of foot on the Overton window, or at least they have had it. Whenever they exist to be made fun of, basically. That's sort of their
pretty much,
position, yeah.
So this article goes into sort of them talking about how their life is with such widely diverting political opinions, right? How do they make the cohabitation work with such diverse political stances? And they're getting some comments from like friends and family, etc. And they end up saying that, you know, if it wasn't for if I didn't love her this much, it wouldn't have worked out or something. They married in 2001 and have a total of 8 children. My immediate concern was, wow, that's a lot, but I think it's because they have previous marriages, so they have children from before.
Yeah, that's a little bit gayer, actually. I actually thought they had 8 children together. I mean, it's still quite a bit, but if they a total of 8, well,
I mean, it's not letting me show the results. Oh, there it is. Okay, so could you date someone who disagreed with you politically? And 61% says yes. 39% who read this article said no. Of about
well, it's a surprising high amount of no's. You know, I think the boomer answer is yes, isn't it?
Like, that's a bit of went through the same thing, based, and then never mind.
Yeah, forget about it. Then we have this boomer scientist there who's very
boomer scientist
about,
saying that, you know,
secret voting, I guess, or anonymous voting.
Yeah. And then they ask a couple of students at a local university. Some people are saying that as long as it's, you know, it's not quite extreme, you can do it. This guy says, well, it might be easy for me to say now, but, you know, I think I could do it. One of them disagrees, one of the women. The other woman says it's important to be different. I don't think there's anything negative about this. This guy says it's important to see this. By the way, this like scrolling thing, if you're not on a phone, this is like the worst thing ever, by the way. Yeah, I would like to see like 1/10 of the content, right? Perfect. Just give me a document so I can read with my eyes. That would be great. Yeah, old man with pony. Look, because now I'm going to scroll up and I got to do all this. Yeah, the old man with the ponytail.
Yeah, that's mobile first world, you know.
Hate it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, this is just a bit of a
articles,
piece. Right? They seem to be, you know, making.
But I mean, I have a couple of, you know, thoughts on it, because I mean they're living in Agder municipality. It's not one of the bigger municipalities, and I always do imagine, like, how much ideology are you able to fit into municipal politics? Not a lot.
Little. I think municipal politics. Very little. I mean, 9 times out of 10, at least in my view, you know, you vote for the person, not necessarily the party, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think for these two people, if they're career politicians, right, it's just like, okay, my friends are just in this party, and I was just put here in like one of these youth camps, and this is my network. I went
through like the factory to become a politician.
Yeah, I just did the training camp and the sort of grooming to get here, and these are my friends, and this is my network. So, and this is what I know how to do. So I would imagine that these people are sort of very unideological, as they're sort of almost like post ideological at this point, where it's like that doesn't even come up in conversation or something. And like, because the resources are usually so stretched in these municipal elections, and you're not able to affect big changes. It's just like these, you know, it's just schooling and, you know, maintenance roads and this kind of stuff, there's very little wiggle room to do anything. And
Yeah.
on top of it, like, they're white boomers who've grown up in this kind of Norwegian sphere politics. So their opinions are probably not as diverging as, say, some kind of, two American culture warriors or something from different races.
Oh, no, not at all. Right. I mean, there's still a degree of sensibility, right?
Yeah, there's the common courtesy and the kind of like gentleman's rule of politics. And so I imagine that this doesn't have to be a problem in any sense. It's like something that sounds a little bit wild, but it's like you said, it's a nice fluff piece. But it does lead me into the idea of, like, when you've been a politician for so long, you're probably just a pragmatist at that point. It's just like taking out the garbage. Basically, it's not like this thing where you're thinking about you're going to change the world, being the mayor of Agder or whatever. But, like, I sent you a meme in the Telegram chat. Maybe you can bring that up, because there's been some Twitter threads that I was reading this week about, like, having a political girlfriend and, like, this fantasy of having the based like the base GF, which is, it's really, my impression is that the people who have this fantasy, it's like, it's either men who have zero experience with women, or guys who have it as some kind of, like, naughty kind of, like, fetish romance thing that they're into. I don't think,
what do you mean by
really
that?
Wants to.
Like, you have a fetish that your girlfriend is political?
Yeah, it's like, it's if you're on one side of the spectrum and the woman is on the other side of the political spectrum, then it's a little bit taboo. It's a little bit naughty,
yeah.
Right? This thing has just showed up on my Facebook feed, and I'm not even sure if it's, like, a joke or not. But I could imagine, like, some guy who has, like, had zero interactions with women his entire life put this up.
I feel like someone is baiting me like baiting everyone by, I think she has a tattoo here, right?
And a nose ring. Yeah. So it might be, like, very high level bait. I'm not sure. I don't know what the chat feels about this. And it's very redundant.
Who says
as well.
For $5 American? I can answer that. The fetish is that you put on the armband in the bedroom.
Yes.
Well, that's the we showed this the Amazonian GF of what's his name? Do you remember that photo?
Mark Collette or something?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hang on, Mark Collette, your old friend.
I think he has
here
this,
it is. I found it. Yeah, I found it. It's this one. Let me see here. Here it is. This is what boys want, right?
It's a great photo. I mean, it's not so subtle. This woman is practically a giraffe, right? She has a very, very long neck. I think if her neck was the same length as his, they'd probably be almost even. But some people are just like that. But I don't know your take about this. I mean, Lawrence Southern has been, on
this
on
one
Twitter,
is just kind of a fun thing. I mean, whether or not, you can be uber based and say that, expecting women to have political opinions is silly, because they're gonna, at some point be gravitationally pulled by yours anyway. But I mean, there's a degree of sensibility, right? And I have political discussions all the time, or philosophical discussions all the time with my wife, right? And we're doing fine, right? Sometimes we disagree, and sometimes we disagree for a while, and then revisit the topic and find out that what, actually we do agree, right? Which usually we do.
Well, you have to be a little bit sensible, right? If you're both culture warriors, then it's at some point it will not work.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to marry a culture warrior.
But generally, if you are a culture warrior,
she generally doesn't care about politics at all, right? She's happy to discuss ideas and philosophy, but like the idea of like getting caught in the sort of the show is something that she doesn't want to. She just doesn't care.
No, I mean, there is a certain type of person, if you want to like get into one of these confrontations on political rallies that are filmed by people and stuff. there's a personality type there, and it makes for good content. I just don't think that those people are very great in relationships in general. Prove me wrong.
Right. Well, anyway, so another article which was, this is an opinion piece which was posted in the state media by a psychology student. I think he's a PhD student, called Men in Women's Land, which is the direct translation. I ran this through Google Translate. I'll do my best to translate this. It's written by this guy, and it caught a lot of flack, including a couple of, or at least one response from a feminist. And this guy is saying a lot of things that I guess we would agree with. He's starting to say that the man's characteristics are undesirable in modern society, and he happens to stand for letting men be men. And he says softness. Sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I read through the article before we went in here, and like he's just running this sort of like Manosphere 101 stuff.
He is,
and I mean,
you have to understand, to Norway, that is very radical.
Yeah, it is quite radical. So it's just sort of an import at this point, and I feel like it's a little bit behind the curve. But I heard this quote that was, I think I was listening to Red Scare or something that was attributed to Curtis Yarvin, where it's like, you know, telling the truth is not very profitable, but it's very profitable to be 10% wrong. And I feel like this is written in that style where it's like, it's 10% wrong.
He's
because
inviting.
it's sort of inviting people to disagree with them. And that pulls views, you know, if you have, when you think about guys like, whether it's like Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate or something, it's like 10% wrong. They're always 10% wrong. Like these, the really big influencers,
Just
they have
enough
like
to get you to comment, right?
Yeah, most of it makes sense, but they have, you know, some like kind of retarded, logically inconsistent opinions, and that it draws in people. So I'm going to give this guy, you know, the benefit of the doubt, and you'll keep reading, and we'll just comment.
Sure. Softness. Hang on, I'm going to bring up the Norwegian one and have it side by side, just in case I'm misrepresenting this in any way. Softness has become the new ideal, and as far as possible, men should be socialized to become more feminine and peaceful. We need to talk about emotions. We have to sit still. We have to take our medicine. We are too troubled, and God forbid any form of fighting. The man has become the primitive and the banal, while the woman has become the new ideal, the new ideal social democratic citizen.
Well,
as
I don't
a
know
man, one may feel like a survivor from another time, but it starts at an early age. Sorry.
I don't know. I don't know if it's like the new ideal social. You know, I think they've always been kind of the ideal social democratic citizen. The women are usually the ideal, whatever corporate employee, anything.
Well, I mean, you can argue whether or not. I mean, the point is that they fit the mold that the current society wishes to promote.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, they do, and I mean, what I especially do agree with them with that still bothers me is like the stuff with talking about emotions. That's something I see in the media quite a lot. That sort of women talk about. Well, we need to teach men to speak about emotions. And then that comes up.
Here like, why do I want to talk about emotions?
It comes up with like,
why do I want to talk about my emotions with anyone other than like my closest friend and my wife? Right.
Suicide rates is usually when it comes up with violence. Like as if talking about emotions is going to solve this problem for men. I feel like it's just such a fundamental.
I just don't have any
misunderstanding
drive to talk about my emotions. Right.
Misunderstanding of how men think and how men work. If you think that, you know, like, okay, some guy just sitting down and talking about how he feels like shit, that, you know, that's going to make everything
that's going to solve everything.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Which, you know, at that point kind of just feels like a humiliation ritual, right?
It really does. It really, really does, to be honest. And that's a bit of the problem as well. Like they talk about like psychiatry. I mean, psychiatry is for women. I'm sorry to say, I mean, you could get a good male psychologist or something, but I do see it as a discipline to sort of like soothe neurotic women. mainly. And of course, doesn't mean you should be ashamed of seeing a therapist or something, but just the way that it's built up and structured with like speed talk therapy, I feel like it's so tailored to just sort of
It
make women
serves
feel
them a lot.
better,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. But Nordano says, I talk about my emotions, aka pray with God. But I mean, yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's something between you and God, right? You're not standing, in a public space talking about how you're a sad boy or something, right? It's just not something you do.
And there is a price as well. I don't think like people sort of understand, the difference between men and women, and like the unspoken rules between men and women in society. That there is a price to pay for being a man and sitting in like going into this sort of confessional mode, talking about your emotions and your inner secrets and stuff like that. That's something a woman can do, and that can
it's a very
you could look
foreign
at
concept.
that.
Yeah.
But for a man to just sit and spill out your emotions as some kind of
It
nervous
takes
wreck,
a while, right? And you
it
really need to have the time and place and structure to be able to do that, which as I said, if I'm going to do something like that, it's, alone with my closest friend, right? At
yes.
night, or,
And
in a similar situation with my wife, right? Because she's my wife, and that's part of the institution of marriage, is, it's part of the contract. But even then, it takes maybe like an hour for me to start, being able to talk about this stuff, right? We have to like work our way into it.
I agree. Like it is sort of something that's happening on the inside. It's not something that's happening toward the outsider, right? And the kind of, let's just say the standing that you have as a man within a hierarchy can never be recovered after that. I don't think people understand that, but it's like if you have some kind
if
of
you do it
emotional
publicly, right?
outpouring,
That's
it is
And
just
how
done.
many times
Like,
have you like encountered women in real life and online, obviously, that talk about experiences where men ended up, oversharing or crying in front of them, and they describe like getting the ick, right?
yeah, perfect.
Or
It's
they end up
perfect.
breaking up with them.
This is something very kind of deep and instinctual, and even for men as well. So they will just pick up on that, and they will see you as basically unstable, and therefore they see you as unfit to do whatever you're supposed to do, whether it's just to do a job or to lead, especially. So it's very hard to recover from that kind of stuff. So it's like you're trying to encourage men basically to kind of just torpedo their own reputations by doing this. And I see that there are a lot of guys who sort of misunderstand these rules. Like they sort of think that stuff that's made for women also applies to them, whether it be kind of like sexual liberation ethics or this kind of like client culture or something like that, where they're sort of pleading to be clients. It's
yeah.
I mean,
if only
we've
we
talked
could
about
be a
this
client
before.
class like everyone else, that would be
Yeah,
great.
if only I could be like a girl, but it's not like that.
No. And so he says, or there's a quote here that he says, the male animal gets castrated, but the man gets ADHD medication. We've got a school system that discriminates against boys. It is well documented that boys develop impulse control later than girls. They're more restless, they perform better when there is competition, and they usually like rougher activities. Today, we have a feminized school system where boys meet female teachers and kindergarten teachers through the early years. They're asked to sit still, and they're disliked by teachers when they're boisterous or rambunctious, I guess. The benefit they have in the gym class is offset by the fact that girls have lower requirements in the subject matters, which means that he's saying that the standards in gym class is lower for women, obviously, because they're they're a weaker sex. And thus, we have a situation where there is constantly a larger share of studies in higher education that is dominated by women. Sorry, what did you want to say?
So, yeah, I mean, about the ADHD thing, this is, of course, going to be a problem if you're running like a first world civilized institution, that a certain portion of the men are going to be so wild that they just cannot fit in. But I think the problem is that thinking that, you know, everybody's going to be equal and therefore it's just going to be diagnosed essentially. I don't think we're at the level yet where you just realize that, okay, like this person just doesn't fit in with this system at all, and you need to have some alternative institution to take them to. And like just seeing that, okay, that's the problem. Like they're just not temperamentally suited for this. But like that's a huge L for this kind of progressive liberal project.
Oh yeah, that's sort of the whole point of his article. He's saying, I mean, if we you know, let's be a bit sober about this for a moment and step away from sort of the men versus women stuff. This guy is, as manosphere as his talking points may be, he is promoting the idea here that the role of the man and the impulse of the man is no longer needed in society. It is no longer fitting to the society we're contributing, and we have no plan of how to handle that, right? And then he's sort of basically saying, how are we going to handle that? And the responses he gets is, shut up and, you know, take the gay pill or something.
Take the pill, Goem. Yeah.
Yeah, but you see, I mean, there's a genuine interest in trying to figure out a path forward because there's no path backward, right?
Yeah, I agree, and women are not going to figure this out.
Exactly.
They never will. I'm sorry. They can be like the perfect, you know, social democratic citizen or the perfect corporate employee, but they're not going to pave the way for the new society or like
new
the new
man
solution for
yeah,
for these people. It's just not going to happen. They don't
21st
understand
century man
at all.
What's that, right?
Schizoid man. Yeah. So yeah, you can't. You know, you can try to reach some men with this stuff. I mean, it's just like complaining to women with this kind of, you know, you're going to get the responses from women that just, you know, just take the pill and just be normal or whatever. We could look at that afterward.
Yeah. So he talks about what he calls the boy problem. So the boy problem consists of what to do with these troubled boys. For our species, as is with other species, we can see characteristic symptoms that young men and male animals are far more resistant to socialization. For example, to ride a young stallion is far more challenging than other horses. They are more rebellious, they are mislead, and they're often guided by strong gender drift. I think he means in a sort of statistical sense. The same is true for goats, male dogs, and bulls. Young men are unruly, strong, rebellious, horny, and messy. And this quote is funny because I have said this to my wife at many points. I've said the woman has married the welfare state instead of her husband, right? Which to many people listening here, that probably isn't a massive revelation, right?
No, these are like microwaved manosphere talking points
Yeah.
from 15 years ago, but I think that something about the formulation of that, I think it leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, especially from like the Norwegian
It's a very
audience who are going
hard
to read
line
it.
to sell to someone who don't understand the logical points that leads up to that conclusion, right?
Yeah. If you don't already agree, you're not going to be won over by that sentence.
Historically, we have always had some war to send the men to. We have it hunting, we have it heavy physical work and discipline. Young men need discipline because they can be dangerous. So to say that all wars, all violence, murder, drug trafficking, abuse, thievery, etc., have at all times in all cultures been made predominantly by men. On the other hand, they can also be brave, strong, self-sacrificing. Most men have sacrificed themselves in defense of family and homeland. For most part, there have been men who have built houses, infrastructure, put food on the table, made art, and written our books. And a lot of that is true even today. I mean, the only
it's still true.
Yeah, the only industries where women are sort of at any level reaching egalitarian numbers are the industries that are, you know, easy to approach from a physical point of view, right?
Well, I mean, women just stack up the middle, right? They're not going to be on the edges of anything, and they're not going to be in the top It doesn't matter which sport or what industry it is. Women are not going to be at the top of it. They just aren't. And I mean, I think like Schopenhauer talks about this in the essay on women, that you could make a note that, something like art, for example, how many great female painters exist? Like you probably can't name a single one, even though painting doesn't require physical exertion. It doesn't require you to be physically strong, but yet they can't seem to perform even in that field. I mean, you probably have like a very high amount of decent painters. And I think if you picked a general woman off the street and a general man off the street, I would guess that the woman you pick will be better, probably behind the pen and pencil than the man. But in terms of like creating exceptional talents, that's not for women. It really isn't. It's very rare to see these kind of like super obsessive talents realized in the female form.
Let's see here. Where was I? Okay, there's an inherent restlessness, a violence, and an urge for status in men. Then he says equality in love and war. Despite our modern civilized appearance, we humans are still primitive creatures on the inside. When it comes to our gender life, we see that women usually choose climb upwards in status, despite all the talk of equality. Women are attracted to masculine, tall men of high position and high status. Men without status who cry and weep are not chosen. So we don't cry. We hold it in. We sacrifice life and health, and we work. And some manage the pressure while others don't. Here's a quote: "As a man, one can feel like a survivor from a different time.
Every day, all day."
More and more men remain involuntary single and childless. Incels, all the involuntary single young men, has been diligently discussed in the media, but often in a slightly despicable and unfortunate way. A lot more men turn to intoxication, and above double that, kill themselves. Of all people in prison, 95% are men. Many of them could need help rather than punishment. We live in a peacetime, and we don't know what to do with the boys and the men. The male animal we castrate, but the men we give ADHD medication. We give them shame and punishment. It works about halfway, but it doesn't work for everyone. When there is a war, on the other hand, we suddenly need the men that no one wants. They're heroes of the war, and they're problem children in times of peace. In Ukraine, let's see. Ukraine blocked the borders for fighting men, and now they have to die in the thousands. This is really one of the most sexist laws that have been implemented in recent times, without anyone seeming to care about it. Which I think is a bit of like, I don't like that argument because it's kind of weak. It's kind of
I mean, what about, there you go again.
It's whataboutism, and it's like, oh yeah, but shouldn't we also be a client group, right?
Yeah, exactly. You don't understand how this works. Like, you're trying to appeal to this kind of like liberal, individualism or whatever. Oh, and it's sexist. Like, you have to understand on a deeper level, like, these differences are real.
Of course it's sexist, but I mean, that's the point, right? I mean, let's start from there instead of trying to make everything equal, you absolute libertarian. Liberal.
The appealing to this kind of equality stuff, it only seems to work one way. It's like women can appeal to men, and weak men can appeal to stronger men. Like, strong men cannot appeal to this stuff. I've never seen this work. It is like the sort of hypocrisy, the left.
Right, you're trying to win by playing their game in a game that they have stacked against you, right? So the point is to reshape the playing field. That's the solution, right?
Let's just quote, let's say, Tarux here. He says it's not weak to point out hypocrisy. No, it is actually.
In this case, it is. What is not weak is winning. Is being the winner.
It is
ruling society. Is not being in the position where you have to bargain with liberals about getting your gibs, right?
Yeah, I mean
by
the
shouting like
what's
hypocrisy, like some Reddit
yeah
tier.
Aaron McIntyre quote there. It's not hypocrisy; it's hierarchy, right? And a lot of the things that you
Exactly.
think are hypocrisy are actually hierarchies. There are
Right.
some people that have different rights than others, and some people are higher on the totem pole. And
If you have to
because
petition the sovereign for Gibbs, you are in a position of weakness. That's, if not, you wouldn't do it. You would be the sovereign, right?
Certainly.
All right. The state as a husband. The state has taken over the man's role. The welfare state has made it easier to have children alone. We have child support, free schools, police protection, well-built healthcare, and more equal salaries. The new biotechnology law, which started, they made some changes to it and implemented, I think, this year, it gives single women the right to have children alone through artificial insemination. Thus, in many ways, the state has become a husband for the modern woman, while there is terribly little need for an actual man. Before, the man was a, what am I looking at here? It is a provider. He raised children. He was a father. He was a protector. Now, he's superfluous. This has created the remarkable condition that more and more childless men live in solitude and finance the upbringing of other people's children. The woman has been given the welfare state as her husband. Men, in general, are less sick. They take more risks, and they seek less frequent help, while they contribute the most tax revenue, and they take on the most crap jobs in our essential infrastructure. Therefore, it may not be strange that more and more men want to build. That more and more men in politics tend to vote for a smaller state, and they index against the right side of the politics.
Yeah, nothing new there.
No. Let's see here. Fathers, sons, and brothers. When these issues are addressed, we quickly end up in an assertive and unnuanced debate on gender. It is claimed that all differences between men and women are due to culture or discrimination, and it is taken as an undeniable truth that there are women we must help with equality. It is only the woman who is marginalized, and all differences are due to society. I disagree. In the absence of good role models and acceptance for male traits, young boys turn to influencers like Andrew Tate, people who at least don't ask them to hate themselves for the restlessness they know as men, who doesn't call them toxic just because they find sex, violence, and cars a little exciting, as men at all times may have done. Don't get me wrong, I love peace, prosperity, and equality, the equality that we have been given. I also think we can agree that the male's ideal that Tate represents are neither good for society nor for the young boys who follow him. Well then, what is this then? What is this paragraph, my dude?
He can't go too far, right? He has to sort of walk it back.
I know, and that's like he for some reason he like pulls back at the end because he doesn't want to be hanged, right? He doesn't want to be flogged.
Yeah, I mean, typically, like from my perspective, you should have just rephrased some of the stuff instead of having to say one thing and then you have to walk it back in the next sentence. I see a lot of this here. Like he has to first come with the manosphere stuff, then appeal to like this liberal shit lib stuff, and yeah.
At the same time, I sometimes feel maladapted as a man in the modern world. I have to constantly strive. I have to constantly strive to fit into a role that doesn't come naturally to me. We talk so much. We can talk all we want about gender roles and culture, but the male restlessness will remain. Claiming anything else is to fail our young boys because it is vicious. Because it is vicious to have a creature despise its own nature. I like that sentence. I therefore ask you, dear women, to think of the men in your life. Think of your fathers. Think of your husbands, your sons, your brothers. Think of these men. Think of these men that, after all, you love, and view them for what they are, good and evil. About how they sort of retain emotions. They build decking. They wash the car and at times act a bit rambunctious. Do you want a society where these men should feel guilt and shame just for being men, or one where we take their differences seriously and we create an equal society despite our inequalities? That is a true translation. That's a very weird sentence, my dude.
I'm thinking of that meme with that guy who was pointing in both directions and he's cross-eyed.
I would like an unequal society that has equality. Please and thank you. For my own part, I feel strongly ambivalent about the fact that I am a man. Why? Why do you feel ambivalent about being a man? Sometimes I think it feels like the man's qualities are undesirable in today's society, as if we are remnants of another and harder time, a time where we were still useful and valued as men. If there was some cure, I might have taken it. So I had, in that way, I would
there
have
is a
let
cure,
go
my
of the
friend. I have a doctor
the
you
feeling
can call.
that being a man is something bad. Well, does Pirelli still have a license?
No, it doesn't stop him from prescribing. He'll still give you a prescription, right? You can get it in the mail.
Yeah, chemical castration for you, my dude. Yeah.
Try to find some type of solution. I don't know. I mean, some of this stuff I don't know how. Like in previous societies where people are like formally valued for being a man, it was just better incentives and more responsibility. I don't think there was some sort of like general. We appreciate you. We appreciate your masculinity. It's really, really great. But yeah, 10% wrong. A lot of good stuff. But yeah, I don't know. The debate is sparked, but there's a lot of articulations and formulations in that article I just didn't like.
Do we want to look at one of the answers? You want to dunk on a feminist?
Yeah, I think we should actually.
I mean, it's low-hanging fruit.
Yes,
but
it's summertime.
It's summertime.
Summertime and life
summertime
is easy.
When the weather is hot and all that. Yeah. So the answer to the article here is no, we don't need men, but we want them, she says. This is an author, an illustrator, actor, cartoonist, musician. I think she was children's book author, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, that might be an area where women are better than men, actually.
Illustrator, actor, cartoonist, and musician. A couple of times a year.
Great.
Yes.
Is that her cartoons down there?
Most likely, yeah.
Look at all that text. Look at all that text. and these, I mean, they look like, have you seen like these Facebook ads that you get for these video games that don't exist? Like the guy the knight who's trying to open these locks to get the princess out. That like it's that art style that she has. I wish I had a name for that, but it's like it's like a company that's making trailers basically, where the trailer doesn't look anything like the game, but it's kind of, it draws you in, and it's the exact same art style. It looks like some auto-generated crap. Sorry, did we lose the article?
No, I just wanted to bring up. It was just the meme. This is the lefty meme. All right, let's bring up the article again here. Is this the? I have to find out which one is the English one, because I'm like live translating this. Okay, here we go. A couple of times a year, articles are published about how sorry we should feel about how men are no longer allowed to be real men because our society has become too feminized. This Sunday, the state media published an article or chronicle Men in Women's Land, written by the male psychology student, blah, blah, blah. He talks about lack of focus on men's mental health, as well as over-medication with ADHD medications. Large slots, or large, what is it called in English? Sort of the run time almost. is used
time slots, I
to
guess.
expunge on how the woman no longer needs a man, which makes the man feel superfluous and alienated. First of all, I want to talk about his whataboutism, the phenomenon where one can only talk about one problem, such as mental illness in women, and then someone stops the conversation to ask about, but what about men? It's not women. It's not the women's fault that the man does not dare to talk about emotions.
I'm just not sure if she understands the concept.
It's not whataboutism, because
no,
he did not refer to any. He literally attacked womanhood. It's not whataboutism. But anyway, it's not the women's fault that the man does not dare to talk about his emotions. This is a result of centuries of patriarchy.
I see.
Yes. I don't want to inflict a whole gender, their originals, inflict on a whole gender an original sin by saying that one reaps as one sows. But I would point out that the system is made and maintained by men, and they are welcome to join the fight to tear it down. It benefits both you and all genders that we get rid of it. This is a very strange paragraph.
It's the standard kind of like feminist talking point,
but it doesn't mean anything. It's like,
well,
you're just saying that,
feminist.
Oh, but men did this, so you can help tear it down. When he's saying, but I don't have a place in the new thing you're building.
I mean, it is a standard kind of like leftist, bordering on Marxist feminist talking point. It's like, oh well, the patriarchy, and both men and women will benefit from tearing down the patriarchy, and they don't actually explain what comes after that, or what that's going to look like. But when you see how comfortable these Sumer lefties are inside the system, there's like, for every year that I hear this argument, the more laughable it becomes to me. That, I mean, we talked about this previously, how like this Sumer metaphysic is like this character creation screen, right? And the young person's personality is basically something it's a character they created for themselves, that they just want to role play. They just want to LARP, essentially. And whatever ideology they come in contact with is essentially just, they're a right to just keep LARPing at whatever they're doing. So, communism for young people now, it's basically just, I want an allowance. Like, I want a sort of bigger UBI so I can buy consumer products. And like, women like her.
Talk about the Auschwitz buzzes that you
yeah, of course. I mean, I talked to my new manager, right? Because we had to get in a new, the company I work for is growing, so we had to get in like an external manager, because the founder wasn't able to sort of handle all of the managerial stuff. And we got in like this woman who is this sort of typical like managerial status seeking kind of CEO type person, right? And she's like the most straight, boring person that you could ever imagine. But she always has like pride flags at her house. She has the pride frame around her Facebook picture, even though it's like there's nothing in her life that has anything to do with this sort of gay stuff at all. But it's just all about status, right? And she was having a conversation around the lunch table because she was like volunteering for sort of like white buses to Poland.
I don't think this is something outside of Scandinavia, because I think this was like a Swedish phenomenon. In like post-war, Sweden would send these white first aid buses to concentration camps in Germany, and so this sort of lives on as a sort of class trip phenomenon, where like a lot of kids, when they're in late middle school, will pull together money for a trip, and usually that's where they end up. I mean, it's grown into, when I was growing up, it was pretty much just an excuse to do like a Rumspringa. I mean, you go into Poland and buy cheap vodka at like age 15, right? And then you got to spend a day at a concentration camp, and then you go home, right?
But I mean,
that's what my friends told me.
Yeah.
I never went, because we went somewhere else, I think.
But my female manager was sort of lamenting this, right? Because she has to bring in Zoomers and Gen Alpha into these, concentration camp school bus trips. And she said that like there were so many of these students that were just giving letters and saying that they didn't want to come. And it was not, when I heard it, I suspected that this was maybe Iranian students. the based Iranian students like they like deny the Holocaust or something, but no, it's actually because like they didn't want to feel uncomfortable. So there's like so many in that generation who'd basically just sent a letter and said that if I would go to Auschwitz, I would just feel uncomfortable being there, and it's not a part of my like curated hug box content, so I don't want to do this. And the other half are basically just showing up to play Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
So they can get like magmar and coughing or whatever near the gas chambers. So it's
not that,
sort of
it's
like
not
you're
that,
facing. Yeah.
It's not that the Zoomers aren't, it's not that the Zoomers are based, they're just too gay to care.
Yeah, too gay to care, too dumb to brainwash. That's sort of where they're at. But like that's why I sort of think that the idea like they're gonna dismantle the system or whatever, like what are you even talking about? A person like that doesn't understand the system. They don't understand anything. They just want to have fun, essentially. So the idea that when I keep hearing this sort of refrain of like, oh, we need to, there's this like this patriarchal superstructure that needs to be dismantled, and after we dismantle that system, then we can, get a better system. That like, it's just nonsense.
Yeah. So the fact that women think that expressing your feelings, that men expressing their feelings is unattractive is a myth. And I don't understand why you, as in the plural you men, continue to breathe life into this. I mean, citation needed, but as a man, I'm going to go on lived experience when it comes to my dating prospects, all right? If women say they don't want it, I'm not going to do it, right? I don't care what some, feminist tells me in an online column.
Well, the centrist mantra of revealed preference.
Right.
Revealed preference. I'm just going to sit here with my legs in the lotus position and repeat revealed preference over and over and over again, right? It's not a myth.
Some women will probably find it unattractive, but there are also men who think that women should be under 60 kilograms. Neither one is representative. Representative of what? Like, what is this perfect world where you can, like, statistically optimize dating, right? Stop keeping these myths alive, and if this is the type of women you associate with, then find other women. Okay, no. It may not be a requirement that a woman should be socially and financially helpless it should not be a requirement that a woman should be socially and financially helpless for a man to feel necessary to society. We don't need the man, but we still want him. It's just not enough that he leans on his biologically innate ability. He actually has to make an effort. Unlike the women.
Well, it's interesting that they say that they want the man, but if you go like the Matt Walsh route and just try to have them explain, what is a man, right? What do you think she would say? Does she have a definition of what she thinks a man is? Can she explain? I mean, she talks about the patriarchy, and the patriarchy is bad.
If you were to date a person, why would it be a man and not a woman, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay,
because obviously, if you're a heterosexual woman, you're looking for something that women can't give, which is what you're saying that men shouldn't have, right?
If it's just like this patriarchal social construction, everything that we know about men, and it's bad for men and women, what exactly do you want? Like, what is she looking for here? It's very confusing, especially now where you have all these gender bender people. Then you could just find another woman or something.
We no longer need tall men to pick our apples. We've got ladders. And we can't throw away these ladders just so the men should have something to spend their time on. This isn't something to cry over, because it's still a lot of other qualities and abilities that the man can bring to the table in his hunt for a partner and meaning of life. Our school system is not feminized. Both the school system and the academics look like they did back when. It is based on the idea that the students are going out onto a factory, and the system was not made by a bunch of women around a table 300 years ago. We didn't even have a female professor in Norway until 1912. I do agree that the school system is, Russian in nature, so to speak, but for different reasons.
It's being maintained. The daily operations of this system is being maintained by almost exclusively women every single day. I mean, if you saw some footage from like a school in the 1940s or the 1920s, I think you would probably change your mind and say that, well, yeah, it's basically the same thing. No, it's not. Absolutely not the same thing. But yeah, go on.
Not. The system was made by men. It is not the woman's fault that she ended up getting the best deal out of it when she finally got to step into the schools quite long after the man. The school system's mistakes and shortcomings have to be improved, and it's neither the women's nor the men's fault that the man struggles. Well, whose fault is it? Like,
yeah, what's the patriarchy,
right? What's the philosophy at the core that, you know, the men have to grind against in the school system that the women don't?
Yeah, I mean, again,
it's not patriarchy. If it was patriarchy, the school would be optimized for men, right? Or am I just not deep enough in like lefty theory about actually patriarchy keeps men down as well?
Yeah, that's probably her explanation. I mean, she did the other paragraph there where she says that, well, men still have a lot to contribute, and it's like ... and let's move on to something else, because I can't explain.
I'm not going to get into it though.
I'm not going to explain anything of what you can actually contribute, and that is the typical sort of feminist byline, right? This sort of like, well, you know, men can still do a lot of things.
Read the literature, Luddick.
But we're not going to explain it. I'm not.
No.
What is the tagline there? It's not my job to educate you. Like, that's their.
It's not my job to educate you, shit lord. Yeah, that's an old school one. The man does not contribute naturally more to society because he's less sick and pays more tax. Well, I mean, yes.
He does.
Men are less sick because the male body is usually the starting point for medical research. I mean, that's let's see here. She has just linked. I thought she linked to like a study about this, but no, she's just linked to the statistics about illness in the work life. Masculine professions such as engineers, pilots, and professional military have higher salaries than feminine professions such as teachers and health professionals. Masculine jobs are generally higher value than the feminine ones, leading to higher wages and, yes, higher taxes. Yes, because they're more dangerous and more important, right? A female surgeon earns a lot, right? Just as much as a male surgeon. But guess what? Statistics say that almost no women who go to medical school end up being surgeons, right?
Yes, and I mean, my problem again is that she's using the term masculine and this sort of masculine professions, but she's not really clear on like, okay, well, what is it? What is a masculine profession, right? Because if it's all like socially constructed, what makes being an engineer sort of more masculine than being a nurse?
She has a concept of what a masculine profession is, right?
Yeah, so she's leaning
male-dominated professions, to be honest.
She's leaning on these.
She's leaning on
the old system, right? The sort of the
she's
patriarchy
leaning on the innate definitions here, right? To define something new, which is weird. When it comes to jobs, when it comes to the dirty jobs, as it were, the pay is usually quite similar. A plumber and a nurse are at about the same salary. That's not true. A plumber has a way higher earning potential than a nurse. At least in my experience. I mean, if you remain like at apprentice level forever, of course, right? But any plumber who starts his own plumbing company is going to make a lot more than a nurse.
Well, I think that, like, I've been around nurses quite a bit and people who go to nursing school, and like they just have. I'm sorry to sound like Ben Shapiro, but you don't understand economics, okay? You don't understand the free market, but because they have one employer, like it's a state, and the state just has it's just a table of salaries, and depending on the educational level that you have and the amount of years that you worked, that's what your salary is. And that's when they're comparing themselves to IT engineers or plumbers or something. They just have no concept that a job could be anything else. But these other jobs, whether it be like sales or some kind of tradesmanship or some type of like IT, high capital technology stuff, it's usually salaried differently. You know,
I
they'll
just
have.
looked up. I just looked up the latest numbers for nurses' average wage or median wage. Sorry, and I took the lowest number I could find. And it's still above the median wage overall for Norway. I mean, we can
Yes.
talk about how like the hours are, awful, and the hospitals are run really poorly, so the nurses have to work like really weird shifts. But just talking about salary, I mean, you're doing pretty well looking at the numbers here.
Yeah, it's not bad, but my general point is that they don't understand, say for example, that you could become a shareholder in a company like a startup and then make money
Yeah.
through that, or they don't understand that you could get a bonus by taking on a project, or that you could work on commission and you make more money the more people you sell to, or that you could own your own truck, for example, and just take on jobs, and based on that, like that's your final salary, and the responsibilities that are tied to it is different than what it is from just having like a straight job with a regular like 9 to 5. And it's just it really like shines through when I read these articles, because they just do not have any concept, and they've never been in that world, and then they'll never be in that world, but they keep kind of like transplanting on their experience onto something where it doesn't apply.
Yeah, they're using like the wrong economic model to describe the phenomenon, right?
Yes, exactly. So when they're talking about like they want to be salaried like IT workers or engineers because they have 3 years education and the engineer has 3 years of education, you have to understand that like the tasks are different,
that's
and
equal,
the demands,
right? Yeah. The guy
the
who
demands
did
are
engineering and the guy who did history deserves the same wage because they both went to school for 3 years, right?
Well, yeah, that's how they think. I mean, I'm not even
These are
kidding.
the same retards who think like, Elon Musk has $100 million in his pocket, right? When they
it's
read
on his card,
that he's
his Visa
worth
card, he just
$100 million, that means he has $100 million in his bank account, right?
Yes.
I can understand that some men might feel like they're living in or they're coming from a different time. The society is changing, but then one simply has to keep up. Well, and then we're back to sort of what I was saying, that this guy is desperately, using his desperate for pussy voice, asking if there's any room for him in the society that we're building, and the answer is no. Shut up and take the medication, you bigot.
Yeah, I mean, she's like answered the question in 5 different ways already, right? It's all this sort of contradictory stuff. Where first she talks about it's the patriarchal, right? And everything is the same. Like the school system is the same, and the patriarchal systems are the same, and they haven't changed. So shut up. And then, well, society has changed, and you just have to keep up with it or whatever. So you get like 10 different arguments that just have nothing to do with each other, and fuck off, right? This is the response you're going to get as a man if you try to like bring up these complaints, like, okay, this is me talking about my feelings, and well, this is what you get. It's a no. It's always a no. So it's like coming with this kind of like hypocrisy stuff, it's it just doesn't work.
We cannot stop the entirety of social development and gender equality just because the man had the most comfortable system that, when he designed it for himself. Well, you said that he didn't, because the school fucks him over. I don't understand this. Is it patriarchy or isn't it patriarchy? A bunch of decisions and norms are now guaranteed to be wrong in 2023, but extremes are... hang on, what's this? It's... I'm not quite sure what she's saying here. She's saying there's a lot of legal decisions being made in 2023 that is wrong, but it's through extremes you find a balance. I'm not quite sure what she's saying. The world is not designed by women, and you don't live in a ladies' land. Both women and men have had unobtainable gender roles forever, but now it's the man's turn to know the uncomfortable and to redefine his own role in the family, in society, and the world. It is a difficult and tough task because I wake up the same day and work on the same stuff. it is important things that have to be discussed, but you have to stop. But you have to stop complaining that we no longer need you, and that how feminized society has turned out. It's time for man to realize that the patriarchy doesn't even benefit him, and it should be broken down before we can find a society where every person are given the full use of their abilities.
So she goes back to basically
what
communist.
Is the patriarchy?
Well, it is basically sort of shades of communist dialectics, right? Sort of Marxist dialectic stuff. That's like, okay, well, yeah, now, but it's like we have to find the balance through the extremes, and then we'll have, you know, extreme policies in one direction, and then we'll go in another direction, and then that will lead to synthesis or whatever. I sound like James Lindsay now, but that's what she sort of. I guess that's sort of what she's borrowing from, even though she doesn't understand it. Not Lindsay, of course, but like Marx and that academic lineage.
Yeah. And now we're going to go over to something completely different. Let's talk about immigration.
Yes.
Someone wanted us to talk about the France riots, which has been in the news for a bit. They seem to be sort of dying down. But what it usually boils down to here is a lot of articles like this, which is Amin Kisaki was 17 when his brother was killed in one of Marseille's most notorious neighborhoods. Amin was 17 when his brother's so badly burned body was recovered from the... Am I still translating this? Just let me... No, I'm not. It's just kind of weirdly written. My brother unfortunately fell into drugs early, he says, his face impassive as he glances up at the scruffy high-rise flats that surround us. We sit talking about his brother, who had trafficked drugs before his murder in one of Marseille's most notorious neighborhoods. I'm so sorry that the drugs happened to him. You know, makes me feel really bad that he just sort of one day, you know, he was walking down the street and then the drug happened, right? There was nothing he could do.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us.
I mean, now 19, grew up here on the Fra Vallon estate, a vast and... but I do understand. Of course, I'm just making a bit of fun because it's a bit of a social or a logical leap. Basically, this article is saying that, you know, there are these ghettos in France where all of these immigrants live, and it's, you know, it seems like it's absolute shitholes, right? And people are dying because they're going into criminal activity instead of trying to work themselves out of it. And they want something else, right? And white supremacy got him into drugs. What I do think, you know, we should realize here, or should... How do I put this? I mean, because it's very easy to, you know, just have sort of the grug reaction, and I share it just as much as anyone else. But the blame here ultimately lies with the incompetent / evil elites that have imported these people for decades into France without giving them anything back, right? I mean, they have made lots of promises, just come to Europe and everything will be fine. And then they turn their backs on them. And then they act surprised when they riot. Right?
Is it the Pikachu meme?
Yeah. They have invited destruction and then they haven't contained it. And maybe if they were better politicians, they would have contained it. If they were the best of politicians, they would probably deport it. Because it's growing out of control. Right? But they have done their own people a disservice, and they have done the people they imported a disservice by giving them a worse life than they could potentially have had back home. So the ones who are ultimately to blame here is... No, I mean, you can say that, okay, the first generation, it sucks, but, you know, it's the brain drain thing, right? First of all, they're not sending their best, and the few who are coming could have stayed home to maybe build their country. Okay, it's going to take 100 years, but, you know, wouldn't you rather help build your country for the future than living in a different country, totally alienated in poverty, right? It's absolutely retarded, and the system needs to be flushed out of these people who don't have any form of noblesse oblige to their own people and the people they have wrongfully allowed in.
Well, it's difficult for me to say how like a lot of the policymakers who brought this about feel about it, because now it seems to be almost a bit of an embarrassing thing.
Too late,
like nobody's
right?
talking about multiculturalism anymore, as a sort of positive. Whenever I hear that word, it usually has negative connotations. Like nobody's talking about the potential of multiculturalism like they did in the early aughts. And the promises of it. I think it's sort of almost a foregone conclusion, even on the top levels, that this didn't work out. But now they have to deal with all the fallouts of this stuff, and it's not pretty.
No, it's time to pay the debts owed, right? But now we don't have anything to pay, and then who suffers? Well, the natives, right? The people you were originally in charge of as a politician, as a leader, right?
The middle.
Yeah.
The middle squeeze.
Jesus Christ. So now France is banning fireworks for Bastille Day. Probably prudent. There's been a lot of shots lately I see on Twitter, like of the French riot police starting to crack down on stuff. So I don't know what the situation is right now in France. It's just very sad to see this, because it's been a long time coming, the wall that France and probably a lot of other European nations are about to hit. But the problem is that we're not really moving that fast. I mean, everyone can see the wall coming, but no one wanted to do anything about it. So what do we do?
Well, what is that Peter Thiel term for Europe? It's like the undetermined pessimism of the European European nations.
Yeah,
they think things are going to get worse, and they don't know what they're going to do about it. So we'll just crack up a bottle of red wine and try to just enjoy the day.
Yeah,
I think that is in the zero. I think that's from 0 to 1. That the book that he has says that.
I guess.
He makes these quadrants, like between determined pessimism, undetermined pessimism, determined optimism, and undetermined optimism.
I mean, I know what I would do, but I mean, I'm gonna get fired from my job and put in jail if I say it out loud, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, we can't use the big boy solutions. We still have to maintain a sort of veneer of human rights and democracy. So until then, we're just gonna have to be like the Joker, and essentially just leaves this kind of the Joker card, and you have to call.
You're just gonna have to laugh at
here's
it, right?
Here's my card.
Here's my card.
when you're ready to kill Batman, we're gonna have to just call me.
The riots were a nothing burger, though. The same shit happened in 2005, but worse, and still nothing happens. Well, nothing ever happens, and everything still somehow gets worse, right? So.
Chud says nothing ever happens.
Yeah. Is there more stuff on the France? I feel like it's been talked to death, but that might be because I listened to the Unpopular Opinions episode on it.
Yeah, I have very little new stuff to contribute with here. I don't know many French people, or I don't have any sort of deep geopolitical analysis. I can just comment on the. I don't like immigrants blowing stuff up either. But it's not really a revolutionary take.
Should we talk about the handshake?
Yeah, I think that's a good article to end on.
Let's see here. So we're going back to Norwegian news outlets here. So I'm gonna again do my best to.
Because this stuff has had reach outside of Norway, right? I've seen this on Twitter from other users who are not Scandies.
Did it? I wasn't aware of that.
Well, maybe somebody can comment on that if you're familiar with this case from before now.
Yeah, let us know. So this is about a principal of a school. I'm not sure if it was ever publicized which school it is or how old these kids are. I think it is the end of middle school. It was like a middle school graduation. Yeah, middle school graduation. And 10th grade diploma. So there was an Islamic student who was receiving his diploma, and he refused to shake the hand of the female principal. And the video that was filming it, you can hear a lot of kids in the room shouting haram, right? Chanting it, I think. Let me see if there's anything else we want to talk about here. People are trying to she tried to talk to like tell people in the audience, which I assume are the parents of these kids, who are probably also Islamic, that we do live in Norway and you have to work with Norwegian women, so you're going to have to get used to this. Let's hope it worked.
Yeah, she made a big scene out of it, right? I'm not, well, to be honest, it's a little bit more brash than I would have expected. I think if this would have happened maybe in like the early aughts, then like it would have been hushed down a little bit more. I had that impression, at least. People were going really hard when I went to school, like with this multicultural stuff, that anything bad that was being done by Muslims,
Andrew
it had
Tate?
to be, yeah.
Is this like, unironically, is this like Andrew Tateism? Like you have to avoid women, like this weird like manosphere Islamophilia. do you see what I'm saying? Like, is this technically Andrew Tate?
Well, Andrew Tate is not afraid of shaking hands with women, right? But he's just it's just a meme, like the sort of Islamo stuff that he's doing. It's the guy doesn't have positions, right?
He's
just interested in money.
Is it based to not shake women's hands because of
I'm gonna give my takes on it, right? Because you're seeing the sort of the media class who are trying to cover this, and they're having you have the left versus right positions in Norway, right? Okay, what's the right, quote unquote, like what I call like the based liberal take. The based liberal take is that we have to force Muslims to be Norwegian, meaning even if their traditions say that, they had like this guy, this like based Iranian, who in this article that he's writing here, it's like, should we allow religious freedom to religions who discriminate? And then he says, well, no. But that's fucking awful. Like, from our perspective, I'm sorry to say, like, discrimination is like the shit. Like, that's what we have to have. And I mean, I'd like to have just like a new word instead of discrimination, because it's become a pejorative. But you want religious freedom. You want people to have freedom of association. And if you're going to say that, you're going to run this sort of Karl Popper paradox of tolerance stuff and say that, we can't allow religions to discriminate, then you can't allow Christianity either. You can't have traditional
didn't want to integrate, so we created a fascist state.
Yeah.
And then in brackets, not the based one.
So,
right.
So the base, this is like our, based Iranian. I don't know. There's apparently a market in Western countries for based Iranians. Don't take this the wrong way. You're probably thinking of one guy, but I'm thinking more about like guys like Patrick Bet-David or something.
Yeah.
And this is like this commentary. He's probably. Is he a politician? I think maybe
this guy's a politician. Yeah.
Okay.
He's for the right, which is the center right.
Yeah, of course. And of course, then you have to. Yeah. Oh, I'm so based that I'm. I mean,
it's election. It's election season, so he's like farming points from the Progress Party by this. Yeah, but that's what he's doing, right?
And so the right position, we're going to force liberal values, Norwegian liberal values, onto Muslims, and whatever like pre-modern cultures that come here, they're going to be forced to, whenever there's conflict that appears, they have to choose liberalism every time. Wow, based. And then you have the left that just says, well, we're going to defend Muslims because they're a victim group. The left doesn't understand Islam, and they can say they do, they don't. They don't understand anything about it. It's basically like the sort of default, almost kind of like brain dead, like it's very simple machine that they just go to defend them. I think partly just to be in opposition to the right, and the other half is because they look for
a real question that you have to, somehow get to the top of Norwegian sort of political discussions, really, if you want to get anywhere here, is whether or not the Muslims have to bake the gay cake, right? Because that's going to draw some lines in the sand. Yeah, I mean, nothing ever happens, and nothing's going to happen. But that's the logical conclusion of this, right?
Yeah, you have to make the tranny cake. But I mean, I'm seeing these articles where they're all talking about sort of, okay, first the Muslims are victims, and the other one is that, well, Islam, like their idea of not shaking hands with women, that's like, it comes from misogyny. It's like this kind of anti-woman stance. But there's not a single person who's in the newspapers trying to steel man Islam, which I find interesting, because they have an actual reason for it. Like there is a theological reason in Islam that they consider it to be, handshakes is for the family, in a sense, like with men and women. You can touch your wife, right? Or if you have an arranged marriage, then you can touch that person. But if you are a single man, you're not supposed to touch other women that are not in your family, and you don't want to encourage these types of relations and passions outside of the marriage. I don't see that as like an inherently misogynistic position, but it's just taken for granted by these kind of shit libs that this is just an anti-woman religion, this is just an anti-woman position, and that's why I have this reaction to it, that they can't respect pre-modern thinking in any sense. And
no, I mean, it obviously
problem.
has to. That's the big no-no, right? Whatever you do, stay away from that, right? Because once you do that, you enter a paradigm in which all of this becomes unsustainable, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we have to just stay in this kind of like, we're not playing with all the cards in a sense. And it feels just like this cul-de-sac that we're just driving around and around and around, and it's getting absolutely nowhere, because we can't actually talk about the real issues. Or like we can't just steel man both positions and see what the logical conclusion is. You just have to say that, well, I'm a sensible man, and you all in Norway, we shake hands with women, and that's what you're going to do in your work life. So blah, blah, blah. And like the other big kind of elephant in the room is that, okay, I mean, well, yeah, technically, if you're in a Norwegian workplace, you would have to deal with women, but women have a lot of protections in the workplace that is just put there just for them, right? So that you can't basically say fire people on the spot or hire people on the spot, and you have to respect sort of maternal leave, and women get all of these bonuses that are they're just put in there for really it's just arbitrary, right? There's no inherent reason why you have to give women all of these bonuses and all of these privileges. So if you can give these to women, why can't you just give it to Muslims? And it's like, so we're getting nowhere with these arguments. If you don't want to touch on these two things, it's like basically women's privileges are arbitrary, and like there is an actual pre-modern position that is, it's not just I just hate women. It's like a real position that people believe in. Very large parts of the world's population feel that way and think that way. And like I see like the media commentary class just fail to handle any of it.
They don't have the tools, right?
Nope. Don't have the brain.
Well, and if they do, they get banned and shamed and thrown out for being dangerous racists or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one more thing. It's going to be fine, though. It's going to be all right. And not in the way you hope, by the way. But it's going to be okay. Because there's been a huge mineral discovery in Norway of a massive deposit of phosphorus in the southwest of about 70 billion tons of phosphorus, which phosphorus is used in a lot of fertilizer, in a lot of modern batteries and solar panels, etc. So for the managerial future we're heading towards, we are very much aligned in supplying everything that our overlords might need and continue to live long after our oil reserves dry up.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I'll soon be in my mid-30s, right? And I feel like during my lifetime, I've seen maybe like almost 10 stories like this, and they'll appear like every 2 years, where it's like, well, we found thorium. That was another one. We found thorium in Norway,
it's never profitable until it is, with these things.
Yeah,
and this is one of those things where like the Americans are really happy that we found this, because it means that they have a phosphorus source that isn't China and isn't Morocco, which is flirting with China. I need a citation on that.
Bricks
and
time.
It's at least longer away from China, which means that, if it belongs to Norway, it essentially belongs to the US, right? So it's not something you're going to earn money on today, but maybe 30 years from now, right?
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, there were other. I mean, I remember reading about like we found these oil reserves where it's like, okay, we have oil for like 1,000 years, and the thorium stuff where it's like, okay, we just power the planet through this stuff, and it's just like you say, it doesn't happen until it happens.
Hyperboreans knew what they left us, right?
Cautious about it, and of course, if the United States are going to get their hand of it, you're just going to like fuel the gay machinery with this stuff. So it's not nothing to celebrate. We'll just pretend it didn't
we're going to make money off of it. That's my angle. It's not good, but we're going to be a good servant, servant to the regime.
Biden's strongest soldiers.
We're Biden's strongest soldiers. Before we go, I'm going to leave you with something, because I just refreshed my Twitter page and I saw something so horrible that I'm going to inflict it on everyone here as well, because it has always been my belief that we already live in a cyberpunk society. The color schemes just aren't as fun as they are in the movies, and this is pretty much it.
Marshmallow. Crunchy corn, yum! Kitty paws. Pumpkin, yum!
I'm gonna stop that before I die or get demonetized. But it seems like she is getting like money stickers, and then she does like emotes based on what she gets. But just the whole thing, like, as I said, I dropped Cyberpunk, but this literally feels like something out of Blade Runner, like those ads you see in the background.
It's even gayer, but
yeah.
I just don't understand the amount of money. It just seems like the amount of money people have to spend on these sort of e-thoughts and like online porn. It seems almost infinite. I can't believe the amount of markets and the amount of niche markets that exist for this stuff. So yeah, we'll leave it.
I'm gonna hunt down who shared this on my timeline. And do I need to block them? We'll see. Maybe. But on that note, I am going to wish everyone watching a good weekend and a good week until next week, of course, when we are back. Hopefully, we are going to be talking to Alexander Adams about his newest book that is coming out. But I'm waiting on the book in the mail from Imperium Press, because they wanted to send me a review copy. So we're going to be talking about a lot of Norwegian authors and artists, Hamsung among them, actually. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully I get the book in time. Luddic Path, anything you want to add before we leave?
Nah, just thanks to everybody for tuning in, and have a great summer. See you next week.
You too. And of course, remember to like, subscribe, comment, all that. YouTube loves it. And yeah, have a good weekend.